I'm Haley Perot, and this is Northwest Newsweek. After a 30-year battle, Lac Seul First Nation is receiving $234 million from the federal government in a historic flood claim settlement. The dispute initially dates back nearly a century. The Ear Falls Dam began construction in 1928 and went into service in 1930. That resulted in the flooding of more than 11,000 acres of reserve lands. In the early 1990s, Lac Seul began litigation claiming Ottawa breached its fiduciary duty by allowing the dam to be built without their consent or compensation. The Supreme Court sided with the First Nation in 2021, and the community voted 95% in favor of a settlement agreement in March. Chief Clifford Bull says even though it has taken so many years, the settlement will be a legacy for the future generations and a real step towards reconciliation with the federal treaty partners. Ontario's health minister was in Thunder Bay this week to confirm $45 million worth of improvements to the Northern Health Travel Grant Program. Sylvia Jones, who's also the deputy premier, says people from the region will now be better compensated when traveling for health care. Vasilios Bellos reports.
Making health care for Northern Ontarians more accessible.
More people in Northern Ontario can connect to the specialized care they need when they need it.
Ontario's health minister and deputy premier Sylvia Jones was at Thunder Bay Regional, confirming $45 million over 3 years to expand the Northern Health Travel Grant Program. It's part of Ontario's 2024 budget. The program covers some of the costs for those in Northern Ontario accessing OHIP-insured health services not available within 100 kilometers of their home. That could involve patients from the region coming to Thunder Bay Regional or anyone from the north needing to travel to Southern Ontario.
Some of our patients have to travel to access care, and this can be a daunting experience.
Patient family advisor at Thunder Bay Regional Paul Carr says he sees the challenges travel can bring firsthand, calling the grant program crucial.
For some, it may be the first time they've ever traveled to an urban center. And of course, it can be expensive. This can be a deterrent to accessing care, as well as an added burden during a very stressful time for both patients and families.
The expansion to the program sees the initial accommodation allowance per night increase from $100 to $175, and allowance for 8 or more nights from $550 to $1,150. The travel distance requirement to be eligible for overnight accommodation has also been decreased from 200 to 100 kilometers. Minister Jones says while the program is currently necessary, the province recognizes improving health services in the north would limit travel altogether.
MRI machines are being placed in hospitals that have never had access to an MRI machine. Similar conversations and announcements are being made with CT scanners. So we want to make sure that as much as possible, we have the access locally for people.
The province will begin implementing the expansions in the fall. Vasilios Bellos, TBC News.
A 34-year-old from Wabigoon First Nation has been charged with second-degree murder after a person was found dead at a home in that community on Thursday afternoon. The accused, who hasn't been named, remains in police custody. OPP and Treaty 3 police continue to investigate. Police say there's no ongoing threat to the public safety in Wabigoon, which is located about 100 kilometers northwest of Kenora. Ignace residents have now voted on whether they want to see a nuclear waste site built near the community. Polls closed at 11 o'clock Tuesday night in a public survey that'll inform the township's decision. But the results won't be available until this summer. Lee Noonan has more.
The polls are closed, and the people of Ignace have had their chance to say whether they want to stay in the running as a potential host community for Canada's high-level nuclear waste. After decades of groundwork, Canada's Nuclear Waste Management Organization plans to choose a location by the end of this year. The Ignace Wabigoon site is one of only 2 still in contention.
It has been a long time coming. I was on council when we first put our name in 2010, and to be in this position, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Property owners and residents 16 and up had 5 days from April 26th to the 30th to vote online or in person. They were asked to take a position on whether the township should proceed as a potential host community for a deep geological repository of used nuclear fuel, or whether to opt out with an option to stay neutral.
Well, I voted for it. And why? Because I think it was going to be a big improvement in the whole northwestern Ontario. And that's what I'm hoping for.
I'm pretty happy with what I've learned about what they're going to do it, how they're going to do it, the safety. If you're going to make nuclear waste, we have to deal with it seriously.
I voted no because we are in a very pristine area, and I feel that Ignace doesn't need nuclear waste to kind of succeed as a community, and that's the feeling that I'm getting from the town.
The question is hotly debated here in Ignace, and most residents weren't willing to talk about how they voted one way or another. The results won't be made available until the summer when the complete report is brought to council.
So Township Council wanted to hear more than just yes or no. They wanted to know why.
Shayla Brecken and her team have been conducting interviews and raising awareness of the willingness process since September. She says they've made contact with every household in township boundaries. She expects her report will be presented to Ignace's Willingness Committee in June. The committee will then make a recommendation to council.
If they don't want it, then we have to honor that. If they want it, then we have to honor that. So I'm patiently waiting to see that outcome, and I think it's going to be good.
Lee Noonan, TBT News.
The First Nations Land Defense Alliance organized an event in Thunder Bay this week to peacefully protest against nuclear waste storage and transportation in the north. The LDA was joined by other Indigenous leaders and community members for the gathering at Waverley Park. Nev Van Pelt has the details.
Stop nuke dump! Stop nuke dump! Stop nuke dump!
A group of First Nations continue to fight for their voices to be heard, and many people from the community joined the First Nations Land Defense Alliance at Waverley Park to protest nuclear waste storage. They depend on their land and water, and Grassy Narrow's Chief Rudy Turtle voiced some of their worries.
We're concerned that of future leaks and accidents, and we're very concerned that if that should happen, it could contaminate the local environment, like the animals and also the air and the grounds, and so we're just we don't want that to happen.
The Nuclear Waste Management Organization has been studying an area near Ignace as one of 2 shortlisted sites for storing all of Canada's highly radioactive nuclear waste. The Land Defense Alliance is opposed to this plan, and the chief of Gull Bay is as well. Wilfred King says this proposal affects all Ontarians, and that the NWMO needs the approval of all communities in this region.
They need the consent of all the First Nations, especially if this is going through territories in which people utilize the territory and land. And it's always been my belief that Aboriginal and treaty rights will save a lot of the environmental issues that we're talking about. And it's my feeling that the entrenchment of those rights in the Constitution, and when First Nations have a say in development, that's their only protection that we have.
The First Nations are very concerned about the multi-millennial risk and how the nuclear waste could impact future generations. They continue to fight for respect of their communities.
Indigenous lands under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back!
Transportation accidents and long-term leaks were also voiced as a concern. Ojibwe's Nipigon councillor Clarissa Kelly says all surrounding communities would be impacted by this, and she explains why they are protesting.
We feel like we don't have a voice, and we're leaving our future generations up to a simple yes or no vote. And we want to make sure that the impacts don't have any destruction, any non-existent wildlife later on in our future.
The NWMO plans to choose its preferred site by the end of 2024. Nev Van Pelt, TBT News.
Officials with the NWMO say it's not up to them to say whether opposition from the broader region could stop a nuclear waste site from going ahead in the Ignace-Wabigoon area. But in the meantime, they say they're ready to sit down with the Land Defense Alliance and discuss the project. The LDA is arguing that inherent and treaty rights mean First Nations must give free, prior, and informed consent before any development can move ahead that would impact their lands. NWMO spokesperson Vince Ponca says the First Nations would be included in the broader outreach and education efforts that'll take place alongside the environmental and nuclear safety assessments that will be needed if the Ignace-Wabigoon site is selected.
Is there a way that that the wider community of the Northwest were opposed to this project? Could it, you know, trump Ignace's or Wabigoon's expression of willingness? And really, that would be up to the regulators when the time comes. As I said, there's that 10-year regulatory process, and it is important to have regional support, right? This is a project that would benefit not only Ignace and Wabigoon, but would bring billions of dollars to the Northwest.
Ponca says the NWMO is always happy to meet the First Nations and discuss the project. A transport driver has been charged by Ignace OPP after the big truck went out of control and flipped over last Sunday evening. It happened on Highway 17 near English River, about halfway between Uppsala and Ignace. Photos posted on social media by OPP show the vehicle on its side badly damaged with its front axle and wheels detached. Police said there were no injuries. The driver, a 25-year-old man from Guelph, was charged with careless driving. A BC transport driver is also facing charges after a rig crashed into a yard of a home west of Dryden last weekend. The single vehicle collision happened on Highway 17 near Minnetonka. The transport appeared to take out a hydro pole before ending up on its side along the property's driveway just feet away from a pickup truck. The crash resulted in minor injuries. As a result, a 29-year-old man from Kamloops has been charged by OPP with careless driving and failure to have an insurance card. It's time now for a short break. When we return, the struggles for Nipigon's town council continues as 2 more elected officials suddenly resign.
Nowadays, if you don't have the stomach for it, you really shouldn't run.
The exodus of town council members in Nipigon continues. Last year, 2 of the newly elected councillors suddenly resigned, forcing the remaining members to appoint citizens to fill the vacancies. Now, the other 2 original councillors have resigned as well, leaving Mayor Suzanne Kuko as the last elected official still on Nipigon Council. Lee Noonan reports.
At its next meeting, Nipigon Council will formally accept the resignation of Councillor Catherine Sakamoto. That follows the resignation 1 month earlier of Councillor Gordon McKenzie. They joined John Zechner and Pierre Pelletier, who resigned early last year, only months after the October 2022 election. That leaves Mayor Suzanne Kuko as the last person on Nipigon Council to have been elected. Councillors Glenn Hart and Gail Westhaver were appointed following the resignations of Zechner and Pelletier.
If you don't have a stomach for that and you think you're going to get your way all the time, or you don't like criticism, hey, Nowadays, if you don't have the stomach for it, you really shouldn't run.
In a written statement, Mackenzie expressed disappointment with the mayor and unnamed councillors among his reasons for resigning. He also took issue with council's recent decision to pass a municipal accommodations tax. Although Kuko sat out the accommodations tax debate due to a conflict of interest, she defends the policy.
This is a source of revenue that does not come from, out of the pockets of the businesses. It does not come out of the pockets of the people that live here. It comes out of the pockets of the visitors that come here and enjoy our town, that might enjoy our parks that we're paying for.
Mackenzie also alleges council did not uphold a verbal contract with another former councillor. Kuko says there was no evidence of an agreement, and the decision not to pay out an $8,500 invoice was made according to municipal purchasing policies and in a transparent public process.
So there was indeed no agreement that we found, whether that was a contract, a thread of emails, anything that documented that there was an official, any agreement or understanding that sitting councillor would be paid. None of that was presented to us. None of it was found by any of our staff.
In contrast, Sakamoto has confirmed that she resigned for personal reasons and that she fully supports the remaining council. 2 new councillors will be appointed to fill Mackenzie and Sakamoto's seats. Kuko expects both positions will be filled before the end of June. She credits township staff for keeping municipal business on track despite the upheaval. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
A section of Highway 17 between Nipigon and Schreiber had to be closed on Wednesday due to a massive transport fire. The tractor-trailer unit caught on fire at Cavers Hill sometime around 11 o'clock Wednesday morning. A huge plume of black smoke could be seen for miles around. Emergency crews rushed to the scene, but OPP say there were no injuries reported. The MTO shut down the highway to all traffic around 11:30 that morning, and motorists were being asked to avoid the area. The fire was put out, and the route was reopened to 1 lane of alternating traffic just before 1 o'clock that afternoon. The Ford government is looking to expand health insurance coverage for wildland firefighters and investigators. The soon-to-be-introduced legislation, if passed, will give the same WSIB coverage for occupational cancers, heart injuries, and post-traumatic stress disorders as municipal firefighters. Jessica Clement has the details.
Ontario's Labour Minister David Piccini is addressing health coverage for municipal, volunteer, and wildland firefighters. At a media conference in Brantford Monday morning, he announced new legislation and regulatory changes planned by his government.
We're also proposing to ensure wildland firefighters and investigators have the same presumptive coverage that municipal firefighters have for occupational cancers, heart injuries, and PTSD. This is especially important as Ontario confronts a changing climate that brings new and extreme weather and wildfire risks.
Piccini also announced that, if passed, the proposed legislation will expand presumptive coverage to all firefighters and investigators for skin cancer,
reducing the duration of service required from 15 years to 10. We will once again, with this move, lead Canada in the lowest duration of service required in the country.
Ontario Professional Firefighters Association President Greg Horton was also at the news conference. He noted that cancer is the leading cause of death among firefighters, with 74% of line-of-duty deaths caused by cancers. He says he's glad the government sees that the current legislation requires updating to ensure fairer treatment for firefighters and their families.
The importance of this recognition to firefighters and their families cannot be understated. Those that become ill no longer have to worry about the loved ones they leave behind. On behalf of my brother and sister firefighters and their families, I'd like to thank Premier Doug Ford, Minister of Labour David Piccini, Solicitor General Michael Kersner for their unwavering support for firefighters across Ontario.
Jessica Clement, TBT News.
A Schreiber man has been arrested by OPP following a major drug bust in that community this week. It came following a 3-month investigation called Project Plateau, which focused on drug trafficking in Schreiber and Terrace Bay. Police executed a search warrant on Centennial Drive and confiscated more than 1 kilogram of cocaine, firearms, and cash. The street value of the drugs seized is around $126,000. A 54-year-old Schreiber man was charged with cocaine trafficking, possession of property obtained by crime, and 2 firearms offenses. The suspect remains in custody and made his first court appearance on Thursday. We will pause here for another short break, but when we return, we'll hear a long-awaited update on a busy road in Atikokan.
It is going to be bigger and better, and it's going to be well worth the wait.
Nearly a year after a busy Atikokan road dramatically collapsed when a culvert gave out, the town is still waiting for the road to reopen. But Mayor Rob Ferguson says the end is in sight. No injuries were reported when a 50-foot section of the Mercury Avenue collapsed into the Atikokan River last May, prompting a state of emergency. Although the culvert was scheduled for a replacement last summer, Ferguson says the extent of the collapse, as well as the need for new engineering, delayed construction. The project is budgeted at $3.6 million, and Ferguson says work is now well underway. He expects the road to reopen within 4 to 6 weeks.
It's not digging a hole and putting a round culvert in. It is concrete work. It's made to last 50, 60 years. It's going to be wider, so there's going to be a walking path on the side because it was a kind of a bottleneck with people, foot traffic on that bridge. So it is going to be bigger and better, and it's going to be well worth the wait.
Ferguson says he's grateful to the people of Atikokan for their patience so far and asks that they grant a little more patience as more major road work is planned this summer. The Wake the Giant Music Festival is turning 5 this September, and to celebrate, organizers announced what they call their most epic lineup yet. It features some big names in the music scene as well as some local favorites. Canadian band The Arkells will be the headlining act for the festival. The Hamilton group tops the lineup that also includes electronic dance group Galantis and fellow Canadian pop band Walk Off the Earth. Also on the bill are returning favorite DJ Shub, The Common Man, Chester Knight, and Thunder Spirit. The festival organizers from Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School say the goal each year is to include at least 50% Indigenous content to the lineups.
We're also using the festival to educate people. So we're trying to get different age groups to attend the festival so we can also educate them about First Nation issues in this country and some of the challenges that our students face.
There's a lot of sides to Wake the Giant, but another super important part is acting as an orientation and kind of a welcoming party for our kids to make sure that they do have a soft landing when they're here for school and that they're welcomed in a really good way and that they're excited to be part of the community.
I feel great whenever I go to the festival. I feel like I have a place there. I feel like I don't stick out like a sore thumb. So Wake the Giant definitely is more than just the music and the headliners. We're giving you a space here.
Organizers are also unveiling a mystery artist in the next couple of weeks to build interest in the 5th anniversary of the popular event. The concert happens on September 14th at Marina Park, and tickets are on sale now at the Wake the Giant website. Kiiwetinoong MPP Sol Mamakwa is taking issue with the recent announcement about the plans to build a Honda battery plant, which could use critical minerals from Northern Ontario. Premier Doug Ford and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau were all smiles at the news conference, but Mamakwa says the two governments still haven't gotten the green light from all First Nations in this region.
We cannot boast about having a full supply chain of EVs in Ontario without the free, prior informed consent of First Nations where the minerals are. Can this government confirm that you have the free, prior informed consent of all First Nations in the North for mining for EVs?
The member knows quite well that we have been, the Minister and the Premier, have been working very closely with First Nations because we understand how important it is to unlock the resources of the North to power not only the economies of Northern Ontario, but to help empower the manufacturing might of Southern Ontario. That is why we are working very closely with First Nations partners in that area who have told us that they want to be partners in helping unlock these resources for all Ontarians and for First Nations communities.
That's all for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. We'll be back next week with more of the top stories from across the region.